Hi everyone, welcome to Flourish by Design TV. I'm your host, Caroline, and so delighted to have you here joining me for something a little bit different. This year, I've decided to, I suppose, fulfill a dream, the vision that I have for Flourish by Design, which was to start an academy. So, a training academy that will start looking at how we are branded on the inside, we'll say, and getting closer to our true purpose in life. And today I wanted to bring you through 5 steps around building your personal brand, true to you. I've been working really hard all week on creating um, a workbook, a training book for you to kind of take some time to contemplate into what that is. What does that mean to you? What is a brand? How do you show up in the world basically as the brand of you, you say? And how can we create that in your essence and bring that to the world that's a true version of yourself? Whether you're, working in corporate world, whether you're a leader, feminine leader, whether you're, a mother at home, and you feel that you want to become more aligned with your purpose and your mission, and you want to start creating a change in the world. So I decided to start this in March, Flourish by Design Academy, with the first training masterclass. And to get you a little taste of that and to get you start thinking about that, I've worked really hard this week, as I said, on putting together a workshop training, I suppose, handout for you to start thinking and contemplating. So it's available on flourishbydesign.co as a download, a free download. And I'm just going to take you through it briefly this morning, and then you can take your time, can download it and have a little look through it and think, talking more and more about this as I go through the next couple of weeks, and giving more information. So basically, I'd love to start off by, I'm going to be referencing this a black and white version, this beautiful color version online, that I spent the week designing as well as writing. So really the first part of it is looking at, why have I done this? What's the mission, even myself, for me to do this, to bring this to you? And I really feel like it's my passion to get people to living a life that's true to them, that's true to their core essence of who they are. And I think, society is set up in completely the opposite. It's been it's drawing us out of ourselves. It's, we end up living a lie. We end up living a lie, and that's why we suffer and we feel depleted with energy. We feel we lose direction. We sometimes find it hard to connect with our family, our kids, our partner. We feel depleted at work. We might feel energized. And why is that? It's because sometimes we're not actually sitting and contemplating who we are in our essence, in our core. And then how do we live that in the world? So that's my passion, really, to get people to live a life that's true to you. And personally, for me, yeah, it's been like, I'm a very creative person. I always loved creativity from a very early child, from a very young child. And it's really like, it's not just been a love, it's actually made me survive. I've survived because of it, because I had a lot of adversity in my life. But I always had my creative skills and my creative action that I would take to try and get myself past, a difficult situation. So it's been like that golden thread throughout my life, but also I've had that trauma thread, which has been, I would say, kind of living not true to myself, living that lie to please other people, to make other people happy, to make other people to feel safe when I was pleasing other people, and really that meant that I wasn't really fully living in my potential that I could have lived, because I was scared of, disappointing people or not, maybe being accepted, because, I didn't want to be on the outside, it takes a lot of courage to really step into your truth. And I suppose a lot of the time I thought maybe I was living, you know, true to myself, but actually when I sat and reflected when I was 40, I started looking inward and looking to see, you know, what was true, what was false, not with just myself, but with reality and society. And being I'm actually a for people who don't know me, I'm an award-winning designer, brand designer. I've worked in massive brands all across the world. I've worked in different countries with design in Scotland and a top designer in the top agency at 24, an all male team of designers, senior designer. So I excelled in my career, but I felt, I suppose, at one stage that, you know, where was the meaning? You know, where was the substance in my life? So I followed into education, which I loved, absolutely loved, alongside, you know, my design career. And then I started to go into this, you know, self-reflection in cottage that I renovated in the west of Ireland. And I started to really kind of distill myself, you know, to really start, because I was activated by the unconscious in society, the culture that we're living in. I could see was having a really massive adverse effect on children. You know, my children were at that stage, were getting to the stage where they were going to go out into the world and be, you know, I suppose they went to secondary school. And I just found, you know, the culture, even for especially even branding, the messaging that comes across to them is so toxic, you know, it's like poison going into the ears, and all the work that you try to build them up in their self-esteem and in their confidence, when they go into society and they're told, you know, you're not good enough, you need to conform to society. It's just an uphill battle. So I became kind of disillusioned with that, and wanted to see how could I change that within my own industry, you know, in branding and in that messaging. So I started Flourish by Design, which was trying to design our lives from the inside out. So looking at our composition of who we are, and starting to, you know, ask people to try to live from that, their truth. So this is what I call personal branding. So looking at ourselves and understanding the fact that we are how we show up in the world has a huge effect on everybody else. You know, no matter where you are in life, you are a leader, you know, because people are looking at you and they're being influenced by you, because we live in this kind of collective psychology, and everything that we do has a ripple effect, whether it's positive or negative. Now, nobody's perfect, and everybody is on that kind of healing journey and, you know, self-awareness journey. But to really kind of look at ourselves and see how, if we look at ourselves as a product or a service, you know, as a brand, how can we start to not just show up to please other people or in a version of ourselves that we think we need to be, but actually live authentically from ourselves, from our core. And I feel that this is really what we need. It's going to solve so many problems basically by doing that. Because when we do that, you know, we create, you know, an authentic life, you know, an inspired life, and we start to become much more creative and much more innovative, and we inspire those all around us to do the same. We can become problem solvers, and we can have more harmonious relationships basically, and enjoy our life more, you know. So to do that, really, we have to go within ourselves and start to look at the aspects of ourselves, the composition of ourselves, so that we can distill into and become much more powerful in how we show up in the world, and become conscious of how we show up basically, and how we're perceived. Because design and branding is all about perception. It's full of it's basically the visual aspect is all based on the psychology, you know, the psychology of what that brand is, the meaning of that brand. It's a meaning making machine, I suppose, a brand as such. So people buy into the meaning that you are expressing, you know, and that what you stand for. So in the training that I have today, I have broken it down into steps for you to start to look at that. So just going to briefly go through it with you, and you can download it and have a little look and think about it yourself, or you can download it now if you want. If you want to do it along with me, put it onto your phone. It's an automatic download. So you just pop in your email address, you go into flourishbydesign.co, and then you just put in your email address, and then you can download the worksheet and you can go along with me if you want live now, or you can do it on the playback. So the first step, the first part of it is I'm looking at what is personal brand. So to find out, it's questioning who you are. Who are you in your truth? And what's the, when, for example, if your name is mentioned and you're not there, how are you described? You know, how, what are the words that people would use to associate with you? What are your characteristics that people, that's your personal brand as such? What are the things? And then to the truth is that unfortunately, this is a reality. There's a reality that people have a perception of you. And it's your job to present that true perception rather than it being, maybe we've been trained to live this lie and have this facade that we put out to the world that will keep us safe and that we've had for maybe many years. We don't realize that it's not true to who we are, that we just present this as a version of ourselves to maybe, to feel accepted in a certain circle of friends or in workplace, or because maybe for a female entrepreneur, maybe around a lot of very strong male egos, we feel we need to be put on that kind of masculine persona such, but it's all of this really drains our energy. So when we look at that, we want to think about, like how if when you show up in, say, an interview situation, and you're asked, or if you're going to sign like $1 million deal or something like that, and it comes to the crunch, and the other person really wants to know, what am I investing in? Who am I investing in? Who am I investing my time in? Who am I investing my life in? Who am I investing my money in? Who am I investing as a friendship even? Who am I investing in? Can you say who that is? Can you really have from your heart an understanding of who you are? And this is your personal brand as such. So it takes a little time to start to contemplate that, to uncover that in yourself, because it means you're getting closer to your own essence and getting in touch with yourself. Not a version of yourself that you thought you had to be, but the actual sense of your own self. So, I mean, today we realize that actually we live in the age of branding. We can't get away from that. It's everywhere. The messages are absolutely everywhere. They're coming from all directions. It's branding everywhere, companies, corporate presence everywhere. So the reality is, and we can't run away from that. We can't run away from the fact that this is a reality that we're living in. So that's number one. And that's why it is so important now to, if you want to redesign society that is more harmonious and more truthful in itself, and that isn't, we're not living a lie, and that we've not been buying into a lie, then the only way we can do it is change ourselves on a personal level. And then as we change ourselves and everybody else does that work, then this is, I believe, the start of kind of flourishing of society, because we can work in more collaboration. So the first part is to kind of ask that question and think about, how do you feel you're being perceived in the world, and start to understand that you are yourself a brand. You have a presence already. And what is that presence already? So just have a little think about that. And that's what we're actually entering into, the personal branding. So the first step is to like look at the investigate characteristics that you admire in other people. So think about it. You know, there's a great line that Mahatma Gandhi uses that I absolutely love. To be the change you want to see in the world. I love that line. I really love it, and I think the characteristics of that man was hugely um, courageous and had massive integrity because the feelings that he had about the world that he saw around him, he wanted to change, but he didn't sit back. He stepped into what he felt was true to himself, and he made that change on a massive scale and created, freedom in India. Um, and it had a huge ripple effect across the world. And I suppose for myself, characteristics that I most admire, I would say I've written down in here as well as fearlessness, integrity, and compassion. They're the ones that I would really aspire to, I guess. To speaking up and speaking your truth and using your voice and using yourself as to make the change that you want to see in the world, and the integrity to actually doing that, putting that into creative action in the world, and the compassion. That's where the feel comes from, the compassion for other people, the compassion and that love to want to help other people that are struggling. That's where the mission is always based in that kind of compassion. So to think about those, investigate the characteristics that you admire in other people, is the first part. And I suppose this, to make this a little bit of fun, if you get a notepad and a pen and paper, and just we're going to be creating two lists. The first list are my likes, and the second list is my dislikes. So looking at characteristics of people that you admire, first of all. So looking at, say, for example, Diana, Princess of Wales, what do you think of her? What do you think of what comes to her in her traits when you look at her? And I have written down, she's, I think beautiful, beauty, charm, compassion, and honesty. Those were the kind of, I suppose, brand attributes that I would associate with her. So, your brand association, what you would associate those characteristics with her. Or Madonna. What comes to mind when you think of Madonna? When you just say that word, what would you think? And I would say I wrote down courageous, super talented, hardworking, and fearless. She definitely came and made a huge impact, breaking down social structures and ideas around sexuality, and very courageous, super talented. She's just, it's an endless amount of talent that just springs from her. So do you personally admire any of these characteristics? And if you do, put them in your likes, put them in that list that you like those characteristics and you admire those characteristics. And then are they characteristics that you would like to be known for? Are those characteristics something that you would like as part of your brand association? Then would like to look at the traits of other people that you don't admire. Think of your life stories. Just reflect and see, who were the people, friends, family, bosses, people that you met along your life that had characteristic traits that you really disliked, you didn't like, that you really had an adverse effect in your life. What were those traits? And put those on the list under dislikes. And then if there's any part of those traits that you see within yourself and how you show up in the world now, start to think about that. Start to think about, is that something I can kind of change in myself? And it's come to realization that maybe you might be showing up with traits that, you're not, you personally aren't attracted to. So obviously other people are going to be like that too. So becoming aware of your own traits in relation to the other people that you've had experience with in your life, and creating that list of likes and dislikes. People that you admire and then people that you dislike, and then, collating a list of character traits that are going to form your brand, and ones that you really don't want to be associated as well, that you don't want that brand association with your name as such. So that's step one. So write your list. Step two, we're looking at discovering your own brand identity. So we're looking at, maybe you already have some traits that you're known for, that you're happy with, that you'd like to keep. And, that's fantastic. And obviously you will have that, you obviously will have those parts of yourselves that and you're very aware of, and that you would like to keep, and that, are very much something that you have established in your life experience and in relationship to other people. And just to look and reflect at the habits that you might, I suppose, the negative traits that you feel that you might be displaying, that you're not really taking ownership of. That you feel that you're, you feel that you're showing up okay. You feel that you're, oh yeah, I'm doing a great job. I'm well liked. I'm reliable, etc. But there's some parts of ourselves that sometimes we don't want to look at, our shadow parts. The parts that maybe we're struggling with, or maybe we just feel like we haven't changed, we haven't improved, we haven't developed, the next version of ourselves that could be improved, and to take that kind of radical responsibility for those areas in ourselves that we feel are traits that maybe can be improved on. Say, for example, I have here in the booklet an example of, you might have a habit of always being late for meetings or for meeting friends, and you're justifying that lateness with being busy. And other, but people actually, what happens is people feel disrespected when you do that, and you're actually damaging your own credibility when you're constantly showing up late for other people, and you're putting other people, you're making them wait for you. It's showing disrespect. So if you want respect, you need to give respect. So taking that radical responsibility for, those quirks, we might say, and personality traits, and becoming really aware of that, investigating into that, and being very, I suppose, being very transparent with yourself about those things. So we need to look at the good, the traits that you want to keep and that you're really happy with and you've developed, and then other parts of yourselves that, thinking about how other people react to you. Are there areas that struggle with in relationships, in work, in family life? Is it there a trait there that can be improved? And once it's improved in one area, it can be improved. When it's improved within yourself, then it improves all those other areas as well. So that one is about, the step two is discovering a personal brand identity, is starting to look at that, our own traits and where we are and how can they be improved. And then step three is testing your perception versus reality, looking to see about how other people, the list that you've created in step two is a good representation of the personal brand that you are now, and then your wish to what you want to become. So at this stage, we're really looking at presenting the perception of your perception of who you are in the world, and the world versus the world's perception of you. And it's like a reality check, So I have a scale on the workbook, and it's basically, a scale of 1 to 10. And we look at ourselves and see how are we showing up in those traits that we've listed in our personal traits, brand traits that we'd like to, brand association traits, I guess we would call it. And where are we on that scale of 1 to 10 in relation to reality and how people are actually perceiving us? So, for example, some people might see themselves as an 8. You know, oh yes, I'm definitely showing up in the way that I want to show up, in the way that I feel I want to be portrayed. You know, I want to be perceived. But the reality is, actually, how they're showing up in the world is actually just a 3. You know, they're not actually showing up like that. They feel they're showing up like that, and they have this overrated sense of themselves. But in reality, in truth, they're not showing up like that. So there's a void in between. There's a gap as such. So or these people might have other you might have inflated sense of self-importance as such, and to look at that, and to feel, is that something that I've just put on as a persona to try and bolster myself through, maybe working with a lot of men, or maybe, being competitive around, um, in a competitive industry such. Sometimes you have to bolster yourself to try and give yourself kind of a false sense of confidence. Or on the other side of it, we could have amazing traits that we are not aware of, that we have this low self-esteem, and that actually we feel we're on a 3, but actually we're showing up like an 8 or a 9 on that reality check scale. So that investigation and that feedback from other people really helps us see how much of a gap there is between our perception of reality and actual reality and how we're showing up. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to close the gap. We're trying to close that gap so that we're actually showing up. We are showing up how we feel we are, and to understand how, and to come into alignment, into reality of actually how we're showing up. So even if we realize that when we look at ourselves and we're showing up on a number 3 on the scale of where we want to be, that's fantastic information, because the only way is up. The only way is up on that scale. And how that, so it's just coming into that truth of who we are, and then how can we maybe show up more, so bring ourselves out of ourselves more than if we feel like we have all this potential inside of us and we want to actually express that more in the world. And what are the changes that we may need to make, and how can we become more conscious of how we show up in the world? So that is that reality check, and step 3. So it's a testing our perception versus reality, and looking at that. And the challenge, I say here, is that the challenge is seeing the world through only, when we see the world only through our eyes, we're depending on our level of awareness and how honest we're prepared to be with ourselves. And can we end up with a false reality? So we're not being real with ourselves. We can be living a false reality. So that part number 3 is basically a reality check, and seeing, how true are we actually to, in reality, understanding our own self-awareness, having an understanding of ourselves. So number 4 is creating our brand essence. So a brand essence is, like the tagline that we would say, that clearly articulates who we are, So we've got, traditionally, like we would say, like there's the logo and then we have the tagline. That's the brand. That's a brand identity. A corporate brand identity or a personal brand identity is, the how, first of all, who we are, who we're perceived as being. And then the tagline is our essence, like the brand essence is what our mission is and where we're going, and our line. For example, so Daniel Pink said, every great person is a sentence. You think of the leaders in the world, these massive leaders that have, forged massive change. they're always remembered for, they might be remembered for their characteristics and their strengths, but also for their line, for that tagline, what they constantly said over and over again, and that changed the course of history, that changed the consciousness of humanity into a different direction. Whether it was creating a motivational speech, like Barack Obama, for example, he became president on "Yes, we can, yes, we can," trying to get people to understand, that we can make change, that change is possible, even though it might feel impossible, but we can do it. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. When people feel like there's nowhere, there's no solution. We can't do this. We can't change it. He was, I suppose, challenging that. He was challenging that perception, public perception, that we can't change things. Things when have been a certain way for thousands of years or hundreds of years, we can't change it. But he was saying, yes, we can, standing for that. So his character, and then his message, his brand essence was that. So, I talk about Roosevelt, and one of his advisors had said to him at one point, you're saying, you don't have a sentence. You're a muddled paragraph. You're trying 17 different things, and as a result, you're doing nothing. So as a leader or in leadership, in any aspect of our lives, people need to know what to get behind. What are you saying? What are you showing up to teach such, or to bring to the world? What change do you want to make in the world? And that's your brand essence, your tagline as such. What are you trying to you need to demonstrate that clearly, because it gives people something to get behind, So leaders are always somebody that people want to follow. They're inspired by. They want to connect to that character for their characteristics, and also where they're going. Like, where are they going? If you're a leader, where are you bringing us? Why you're bringing us there, and what is your vision? So the vision has to have clarity. Comes Your vision needs to be clear. It needs to be clear, and it needs to be communicated clearly. And that's because that builds trust. It builds trust because people know what you're about. They know what you stand for. They know where you're going. And then they can decide whether they're going to support that or not, So that's your brand, create your brand essence. So have a think about that, What is it that your tagline might be? You've got your characteristics, build your personal brand, and brand association is associated with those traits. And then your tagline, your brand essence. What's the essence of who you are, and why people will want to follow you in a sentence, in one line, that you use again and again and again and again and again. In conversation, you bring everything back to this kind of, like I talked about, distilling ourselves down into what do we feel is most important that needs to change in the world at this moment, and why that is, but condensing it down to one line. And then that repetitive, constantly using that over and over again builds trust, because it gives you integrity, and it also shows that you're committed to making this change. So it's so vitally important to create that brand essence. So that's step number 4. So step number 5, there's more detail in the handout, but just briefly bringing you through it to give you more of a sense of what I'm talking about, and you can follow along in your own time, as I said. But the step 5 is communicating your personal brand in an effective way. It's being consciously and deliberately about conveying that message, So say, for example, whether it's a corporate brands, that's what they do all the time. They think of Nike, just do it. You've got the swish, you've got the brand association to Nike is active. It's moving. It's it's fashionable as well. It's always on trend, and it's something that people want to associate with because it's top to kind of it's seen as always moving with the times as well. It's very progressive, and then it's very active. It's a just do it, get it, just do it, just do what you're here to do. Such, and it has great motivational um, brand association and brand essence. So how do we communicate that? You know, look at yourself like a shop window. A brand is like a shop window. What do you have on display in the shop window is what you're asking people to come in to buy. So what are you displaying? What are you displaying in that shop window? My grandfather was a shopkeeper in Wexford, and you know, it was one of those Irish shops where everything was displayed, beautiful window, and he spent a long time putting like every product nearly that he had to sell in the shop window. So people knew what they were going to get when they came in. So that's what a brand is, but you need to communicate that. So it needs to be communicated, and then you need to understand that when they come into the shop, it's not that you're attracting them in with what you have to sell, but then when they come into the shop, are they getting that product? Are they getting that service? Are they getting that what you've said you're going to sell? Are you going to deliver on that? So are you communicating, your personal brand in a way that people can really trust and know exactly what they're going to get, whether it's in a job interview, whether it's in, whether it is a job, whether it is, I suppose, if you're going for, like a promotion, whether you want to change careers, whether you're a leader, whether you're, moving up the corporate ladder as such, wherever you're showing up in the world, being aware of that is really important. And the key is authenticity. That's talked about an awful lot at the moment now, but it's so vitally important because even I'm a design lecturer in Griffith College, and talking to the younger generation coming up, it's just the key word. It's the key word is authenticity. People, especially in branding, in companies, they're so sick of being sold um, fake goods. We'll say, you know, thing communicating one thing in the shop window, and then you go in and just not what they expected, not what they were sold. So being authentic to that, the value that you give is what you're actually communicating, what you're selling is of that value, of that same value. So important. And really, I suppose what people are looking for at the moment is connection, and a true connection to authenticity. So finding, your personal brand, becoming authentic in yourself, showing up in that way that people feel that you are authentically connected to yourself, then you can authentically connect to everybody else around you. So in your workplace, you're an authentic person, you're an authentic to yourself. You're not wearing a mask, you're not living that lie. You're not just presenting a facade of who you think you should be, and then on the other side, but you're actually underneath that, you're not that product. You're not it's not true to who you are and yourself, and everybody suffers for that. Everybody suffers, and the person who suffers most is yourself. So that is something that is so important at the moment, and that connection, that true connection, to build relationships, because really all of this personal branding is all about that. How do we connect authentically with each other, you know and how do we build that kind of strength of harmony within ourselves, with being happy within who we are in ourselves, and accepting all the aspects of ourselves, and then always looking to improve, and that, like a brand is always developed, always changing and moving with the times, and moving with the moving with culture, moving with, what's required, and my passion to really start to teach this, that what's required now is for people to show up in their truths, to really show up in a way that can inspire other people, that can actually give um, hope, and be creative, because that's what happens when we do show up in our authenticity, that we become really creative. We we have so much more energy in our system when we're stopped, you know, when we've come to the realization that we've been putting a lot of energy into living this lie. But when we become true to ourselves and live that authentic, true brand, we've so much more energy. We've so much more, our life becomes, starts to flourish more. We blossom in who we are, and then we flourish in all of our relationships. So I hope you enjoyed that. And I there's it's a little bit of a journey to, looking into ourselves, and looking into, and really, becoming aware that we are, and how we show up in the world, and our traits, and how we can become conscious of building that personal brand. So I'd love you to, start into this, the download the worksheet, the workbook, um, and you can follow along with me with the workbook, or you can, listen to me now and then sit back and take the workbook and write some notes yourself, and start to contemplate that, and starting to bring yourself into more self-awareness of, who you are and how you're showing up. And, like I said, there's the 5 steps are, investigating the characteristics that you admire, number 1. Number 2, discovering our personal brand identity, who we are, who our personal traits are. And then testing our perceptions, so that reality check, do a reality check, and then creating a brand essence. Like, what are we known for? Like, what's our mission? Like, what's our tagline that we're going to be known for? And then how do we communicate that? What's the shop front? How are we communicating our product and our service into the world? So bringing that into the world once we've realized, the brand that we are, and how do we bring that out into the world, So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you find it helpful. And if you sign up for the workbook, you also get all the blogs. I blog on a weekly basis, and then also any interviews that I have. You'll get those straight into your mailbox, and keep in touch with the around training, and the more tips and tricks around creating your personal brand. So it's Flourish by Design Academy is conscious brand coaching, which is my passion to show up to change in the world, because I think there's so much toxicity out there, and there's so much, as I call it's like poison being poured into people's ears, and I just want to, I want people to pour truth and into, and into those positive messaging coming from brands, and personal brands, and corporate brands. So when we get into our understanding what our true values are, then we can match that with our the ethics of the people that we work for, and then we become in alignment with who we want to be, and who we want to associate ourselves with, that brand association. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'm delighted to have your company here. I really am, and I'm so thrilled to have so many of you, in the Rainbow Warrior Women, and I'm going to start a new Flourish by Design Facebook group for trainings around, this conscious brand creators, I guess, conscious brand coaching. So I'd love to invite you to that, and I'll send some more information on that as well. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the workbook, and that it helps you to go into that kind of contemplation around yourself and that self-discovery. Okay, I'll talk to you later, and have a lovely weekend. Take care. Bye.